Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation today is a composition of the Bhagat Trilochan Ji, one of the Bhagats whose compositions are embedded in the Guru Granth Sahib, in the Rag Dhanasari. It's a fairly long Shabad, so we will go one stanza at a time. The recitation. Ik oankar Satguru Prasad Dhanasari Bani Bhaktan Ki Trilochan Narain Nindas Kaye Bhuli Gavari Dukrit Sukrit Tharo Karamari Arahao. Why, Trilochanji asks, do you slander Narayan? Narayan Nindas Kaye. Why? Bhuli Gavari, O deluded one. Dukrit, Sukrit, your actions, good or bad. Tharo Karamari, they determine your sorrows and happiness. So in the very first, this is the Rahao. What Trilochanji is saying to us is that the deluded one here, the Bhuli Gavari, is the ego. And the ego blames Narayan. Narayan, in the Indian tradition, is a reference to the primal being, the creator, if you will, or if you want to think of it that way, but think of it this way. The word itself comes from a combination. Nara and Ayana. Nara is water, Ayana is dwelling, abode. So this is referring to the one whose abode was the waters. So it is a pointer to Vishnu, the preserver of the universe, whose images we see as being afloat on the waters. The waters also signifying wisdom. Now, Narayan, the term from Indian mythology, is recontextualized here in Gurmat. In Gurmat, Narayan is referring to reality itself. So, Trilochanji is saying that your accusation is misplaced. You're deluded because you are blaming reality, meaning the world. You're blaming somebody or the other for your own suffering. You call it injustice, you call it bad luck. We all do that. So, but he's saying, when you externalize your responsibility, you're missing the point. You're deluded. What you should see and understand instead is that your pattern of life, your experiential life, is built upon your own actions and dispositions. Dukrit, Sukrit, Tharo Karam. So that's the Rahao. Stop blaming the outside world. Stop projecting this outside. And then now there is further critiques in the first verse after the Rahao. Sankara mastik basta sursari isnan re kul jan madhe mile sarag pan re karm kar kulank mafita sari. A lot of Marathi words. So Sankara mastak basta. Upon the forehead is the crescent mark of Shiva. You bathe in the sacred waters of the Ganga, Sursari Isananare, and from people of noble lineage, Kul Jana Madhe Mile, you obtain the ambrosial elixir, saragapanare, wisdom. And yet, having received all this, your actions smear you with stain. Karma kar kalank mafitasare. So this is exposing the gap between our display of religiosity, because the crescent moon that is placed on the forehead is a mark of caste, Savites. But our interaction, and then the image of Ganga is wisdom received from the Brahmin, the noble lineage. And yet, what Trilochan is saying is, you may wear all of these. You have a public exterior, right? You appear in public with a caste mark and with scriptural knowledge received, and yet your behavior, your drives continue to smear. So there is a split. You are bathed in purity codes, pilgrimage, lineage, Amrit-like discourses, and yet your karmic habits unconsciously, subconsciously undermine you. The next stanza, Biswaka Deepak Swami Ta, Biswaka Deepak Swami Tache Re, Swarthi Pankhi Rai Garuda Tache Badava, Karma Kari Aruna Pingalari. Biswaka Deepak Swami, the light of the world, is the master of the universe. The implication here is that it is everywhere. We are proximate to it. Even then, Tachere, even then, Swarthi, if you become self-seeking and selfish or egoic, you may be like Pankhi Rai Garud, Tache Badava, even Garud, the king of the birds that flies with Vishnu, can be bound. Badava, if it is self-seeking, Swarthi. By action, Karamakar, you are either Aruna or Pingala, which means you either obtain clarity or become handicapped. So Garuda, you see the example here, is referred to as the king of the birds. Rai Garud, the vehicle of Vishnu. This actually is a metaphor for the inner type, the ego. You may have immense spiritual capital, scriptural knowledge. You may have an institutional role. You may be charismatic. Yet, like this bird, you can be bound if you become a swarthi, egoic, self-referential. What this tells us is this inner bondage is created not by any lack of privilege. You may have everything, but it happens because you appropriate everything, including your devotion, to gaining egoic advantage. You seek that advantage, even through devotion. So Aruna and Pingala are symbolic energies or limitations. You can release the energy of clarity, or you can be bound through your actions. Actions here also includes the thought process. Continuing, Anikapatik Harta Tribhavan Nathari, Tirath Paramata Lahena Parari, Karmakari Kapal Mafithasari. Anikapatik Harta Tribhavan Nathari. Tribhavan Nath is the master, the lord of the three worlds, is the destroyer of countless sins. Anikapatika Harta, it's the savior. Yet, Tirtha Tirtha Paramata. You wander from pilgrimage to pilgrimage. Lahena Parari, you don't find the crossing. So it is like striking your own skull. Karamakar kapal mafitas, beating on yourself. So this is the inner traveler, endlessly changing places, practices, teachers, yet never touching its own depth. So striking of one's own skull is a mind turned against itself. It generates the blows of anxiety, of guilt, and exhaustion through compulsive seeking. Amrit Sasya Dena Lachami Kalpatra Sikhar Sunagar Nadi Che Nathang Karam Kar Khar Mafithasare. Amrit Sasya. Sasya is moonlight, and in the Indian systems, moon is the cooling, tranquilizing knowledge, the Amrit. So Amrit Sasya. Dain, here is Kamadhain, the wish-fulfilling cow. Lakshmi is, of course, wealth. Kalapatra is the wish-granting tree. You may have all of this. You may have knowledge. You may have the capacity to fulfill your wishes. You may have wealth. And again, every wish of yours may come true. Yet, through your actions, what are you doing? You are rubbing yourself with salt. Karamakar khar mafitasare. So, abundance, these are all abundance symbols. Kamadhain, Lakshmi, Kalipatra. Abundance. What Trilochan is saying is that abundance of everything cannot neutralize the corruption of the mind. Karma fetus, that's the ego. When desire is untrained, even sweetness is tasted as salt. Relationships, gifts, circumstances are all corroded by the ego, by greed, by entitlement. Dadile Lanka Gad Upadile Dadile Lanka Gad Upadire Ravana Bansal Bisal An Tokhile Hari Karma Karaka Choti Mafitasari. So that's the refrain, that you are actually self-destructing. Dadile Lanka. Lanka was burnt. Ravana was destroyed. The forest was speared, shattered, and you satisfied Hari. You pleased the Har. Yet, by your actions, you rub yourself on the testing stone, which is what Ram did. Ravan and Lanka, of course, symbolize grand egoic empire that collapses. These are major, massive outer upheavals. And even victories like this for Ram, which looks like divine interpretation, it can turn you on the touchstone of reality. The real question is, what metal are you made of? What metal is revealed when life rubs us? Is it humility and clarity? Or is it a more armored ego that comes out of all of these events that are being described? So all of this stuff can happen and your ego may still be intact, is what the Lochan is saying. And then he tells us in the conclusion, Purbalo krit karamana miteri, Gar gehan tacha mohe, Japiyale Ram che namang, Badat talochan Ramji. So Purbalo krit karamana miteri, past actions, conditioning, they do not vanish because they keep getting stronger. Even in household life, gargehan, attachment persists. So, the solution is that remembrance of wisdom, of Nam. So, what is being said here is, by naming Gargehan, by saying that even in the household, your actions are not forgotten, they persist, he invokes the household here to make a very concrete teaching point. He's saying, even in ordinary domestic life, attachment, karmic momentum remains fully operative because we have to deal with the world. So therefore, one cannot imagine that home is somehow exempt from inner work. It is not. Bhagat Tarlochan is very demanding. So what he's saying, by naming Gargehan, he's collapsing the distance between an overtly religious space like a gurdwara, a tirath, and the everyday arena where we are, where we desire, where we cling, where our patterns of behavior are playing out. It is precisely there that we have to remain in remembrance of Ram, meaning mindfulness embedded in wisdom. So, ritual does not mean transformation, status does not mean freedom, abundance does not mean purity, and power does not mean liberation. The decisive factor is karam, action that is born of inner orientation, Nam orientation, action that is taken in Nam consciousness. That is the decisive factor. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.